The old pawn shop smelled of dust, rain, and forgotten dreams. A frail elderly man stood before the counter, soaked to the bone. His hands trembled as he slid a Purple Heart medal across the glass. The clerk barely looked up before naming a price. $40. The old veteran hesitated. Pain flashed across his face. Hunger finally defeated pride. He opened his mouth to accept the offer. Then another voice cut through the room. Firm, calm, unshakable. A young African-American Marine reservist stepped forward. His name was Marcus Griffin. He was 26 years old, tired from life and carrying burdens nobody could see. Yet he reached into his wallet without hesitation. Give him the money, give him back his medal. He is not selling it today. The old man stared at him with disbelief. Marcus had never met him before. Still, something deeper than logic guided that decision. The medal stayed with its owner. The young Marine walked away with empty pockets. Neither man understood that a single act of kindness had just changed both of their lives forever. To understand why Marcus made that choice, you must understand the weight already resting on his shoulders. Earlier that same day, before the rain, before the pawn shop, before destiny quietly stepped into his path, Marcus woke in a tiny apartment above a laundromat in Norfolk, Virginia. The room was modest but spotless. Every object sat exactly where it belonged. Military discipline had become part of his identity. His boots stood neatly beside the door. His dress uniform hung protected inside a plastic garment cover. On a shelf rested a framed photograph of his mother, Vanessa Griffin, smiling proudly in her Navy nurse uniform. She had died when Marcus was only 9 years old. A rainy highway accident had taken her away. Beside the photograph rested a folded American flag from her funeral service. Marcus looked at both every morning. His grandmother, Loretta Griffin, slept quietly in the next room. She was elderly, diabetic, and surviving on a fixed income that never stretched far enough. Medical bills covered the kitchen counter. Past due notices sat beneath them. Marcus flipped through the papers again. He already knew every number by heart. The rent was due soon. Prescription refills were approaching. Truck payments were overdue, yet he checked everything once more. Struggling people often repeat the same calculations, hoping the answer changes. It never does. He opened his banking application and stared at the balance. $38 remained. That number followed him like a shadow. He poured coffee into a thermos and opened the cabinet. Only enough cereal remained for one breakfast. He left it for his grandmother. Then he headed into the darkness without eating. At Patterson Auto Body, Marcus arrived before everyone else. He always did. The shop contained 4 repair lifts, an aging paint booth, and a radio that alternated between gospel music and static. Marcus had worked there since leaving active military service. He was the hardest worker in the building and probably the least appreciated. Yet he never complained. Complaining never paid bills. Mid-morning, a woman arrived with a broken brake light and 2 children waiting inside her van. She apologized before even speaking. Marcus fixed the problem in minutes. When she reached for her wallet, he refused payment. It was only a small bulb. She needed the money more than he did. His co-worker shook his head afterward. Marcus simply smiled. Being useful mattered more than being comfortable. During lunch, Marcus sat alone inside his aging pickup truck. The windows were down. Warm air drifted through the parking lot. A legal pad rested across the steering wheel. For years, he had filled its pages with sketches and plans. They all centered on one dream: a community mentorship center for neighborhood children. He envisioned classrooms, computer labs, tutoring spaces, a gymnasium, and a kitchen where young people could learn life skills. Every room existed inside his imagination long before it existed in reality. Volunteers had already promised support. His pastor believed in the project. Families needed it. The neighborhood needed it. Yet dreams require resources, and resources remained painfully scarce. On the first page of the notebook appeared a sentence copied from his mother's handwriting. Marcus read it every day. If you cannot feed 100 people, feed one. Those words had shaped his entire life. They reminded him that kindness mattered even when circumstances felt hopeless. He traced the letters with his thumb before closing the notebook. The dream remained alive, though distant. Some days it felt like a star shining from another galaxy. That afternoon, Marcus carried exactly $38 in his wallet. $38 stood between his family and another difficult week. $38 represented groceries, prescriptions, fuel, and survival. Yet fate had already begun arranging a different plan. Somewhere else across town, an elderly former Navy SEAL named Walter Barrett faced struggles of his own. Hunger had followed him for days. Grief had haunted him much longer. By sunset, both men would enter the same pawn shop. One would attempt to sell a medal earned through sacrifice. The other would surrender his final dollars to stop him. Neither understood that their meeting was only the beginning. And before the storm ended, a secret hidden inside Walter Barrett's past would emerge and change everything Marcus believed about the stranger he had just saved. Across town, rain tapped softly against a small window above a hardware store. Walter Barrett sat alone on a military cot inside a room barely large enough to hold a life. The silence felt heavier than the weather outside. There was no television, no telephone, no family photographs hanging proudly on the walls, only a folding chair, a duffel bag, and a single light bulb dangling from the ceiling. The room looked temporary, yet Walter had lived there for months. He had chosen isolation the way some people choose comfort. It was not because he enjoyed loneliness. It was because grief had convinced him that disappearing was easier than surviving. Walter slowly reached for an old shoebox resting on a nearby shelf. His movements carried the caution of a man handling sacred objects. Inside lay his Purple Heart medal. Beside it rested a silver star. There was also a photograph of a woman named Helen. Her smile seemed warm enough to brighten the entire room. Walter studied her face for several moments. 51 years of marriage had passed between them before cancer arrived and stole everything. Even now, he still spoke to her photograph as though she might answer. "I am sorry, sweetheart," he whispered quietly. His voice barely rose above the rain. The diagnosis had shattered their world. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. The doctors spoke carefully. They offered comfort instead of hope. Walter refused to accept that answer. He spent everything he personally owned trying to save Helen. Experimental treatments, specialists, private care, hospice facilities with gardens because she loved flowers. He emptied accounts without hesitation, yet there was one thing he refused to touch. The company he had spent decades building. Thousands of employees depended on it. Their families depended on it. Walter believed leadership meant protecting others even during personal tragedy, so he used his own fortune while leaving company resources untouched. When Helen finally passed away, something inside him collapsed. Friends described him as strong. Business magazines called him brilliant. Military veterans respected him. None of those labels mattered after her death. Within weeks, he transferred control of his company to his longtime partner and closest friend, Raymond Connors. Then he vanished. No goodbye, no forwarding address, no explanation, just silence. For more than a year, Walter drifted through Norfolk like a ghost. He rented cheap rooms, avoided attention, ignored anyone trying to help him. Meanwhile, Raymond searched relentlessly. Investigators followed leads, security teams tracked rumors. Every effort ended the same way. Walter Barrett did not want to be found. Unfortunately, hunger eventually catches everyone. That morning, Walter had not eaten for days. His stomach no longer protested. His body had stopped asking for food. He stared into a cracked bathroom mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Sharp cheekbones, hollow eyes, wrinkled clothing hanging loosely from a shrinking frame. The reflection looked less like a former warrior and more like a man slowly surrendering. He slipped the Purple Heart into his pocket. The silver star remained behind. Some possessions carried memories too painful to touch. Then he stepped outside into the rain. Every block felt longer than the last. His legs trembled. His shoulders sagged. Still, he kept walking. Pride urged him to turn around. Survival demanded another step. Survival won. By the time he reached the pawn shop, his jacket was soaked through. Water dripped from his sleeves. He pushed open the door and approached the counter. The medal felt heavier than metal. It carried decades of sacrifice, service, and brotherhood. Selling it felt like erasing part of himself, yet hunger leaves little room for sentiment. Then Marcus Griffin entered. The young Marine reservist had arrived for a different reason entirely. Hidden inside his pocket was his late mother's watch. It represented the last valuable possession he owned. He intended to sell it for grocery money and medical expenses. His grandmother needed medication. Bills were piling higher every week. Logic said he could not afford generosity. Yet logic lost. The moment Marcus saw Walter sliding that medal across the glass, something inside him rebelled. He saw more than an old veteran. He saw dignity under attack. He saw sacrifice being exchanged for survival. Most importantly, he saw a human being standing alone. So he intervened. $40 changed hands. The medal stayed with Walter. Marcus walked away with nothing. Outside, the rain intensified. Wind whipped across the parking lot. Marcus climbed into his truck and stared at his empty wallet. Reality arrived quickly. There would be consequences for this decision. No groceries, no extra fuel, no financial safety net. Every problem waiting at home still existed. Maybe he had been foolish. Maybe he had been reckless. Or maybe kindness always feels expensive in the moment. He lowered his head against the steering wheel and sighed. Then he looked through the windshield. Walter remained standing alone near the edge of the parking lot. Rain pounded his shoulders. One hand held the Purple Heart. The other clutched 40 crumpled dollars. He stared toward the street as if he could not remember where he was supposed to go. Marcus watched him for several seconds. A reasonable person would have driven away. A practical person would have protected the little he had left. Marcus opened the truck door instead. The decision seemed small. In reality, it would change both their lives forever. As Walter slowly turned toward the sound of Marcus calling out, neither man noticed a black SUV parked across the street. Its windows remained dark. Its engine continued running. And inside, someone had just recognized Walter Barrett. The rain continued falling as Marcus watched the old veteran standing alone near the curb. Water streamed from Walter Barrett's jacket and collected in shallow puddles around his boots. Traffic moved past without slowing. Nobody noticed the elderly man except Marcus. Something about that image stayed with him. Maybe it was the way Walter held the Purple Heart. Maybe it was the exhaustion written across his face. Whatever the reason, Marcus could not ignore it. He stepped out of the truck and called toward him. "Sir?" Walter turned slowly. Those sharp blue eyes immediately studied Marcus. Years of military training remained visible beneath the weariness. Walter looked like a man who never stopped assessing threats. Even now, half-starved and soaked by rain, his instincts remained active. "Where are you headed?" Walter gestured vaguely toward the eastern side of town. "Just a few blocks." Marcus knew that was not true. The old man struggled to remain upright. His legs shook beneath him. Every movement revealed weakness. "Get in the truck." Walter frowned. "You already helped enough." Marcus folded his arms. "And you look like you are about to collapse." The rain intensified around them. Walter glanced toward the street, then toward the truck. Finally, he nodded. Pride surrendered once again. The drive began in silence. Windshield wipers moved steadily back and forth. Rain drummed against the roof. Neither man seemed eager to fill the quiet. Marcus concentrated on driving while Walter watched the road ahead. After several minutes, Marcus noticed something unusual. Walter sat perfectly straight. His posture never relaxed. His eyes constantly checked mirrors and intersections. Every passing vehicle received a brief evaluation. This was not nervousness. This was conditioning. The habits of a man who spent decades operating in dangerous environments. At one stoplight, a driver behind them honked impatiently. Walter's hand instantly moved toward the door handle. His grip tightened, then slowly released. Marcus noticed everything. The body remembers things the mind wants to forget. "When did you get out?" Walter kept his eyes forward. "Depends on what you mean by out." Marcus smiled slightly. "Fair answer." Several moments passed. Then Walter finally spoke. 34 years, 5 deployments, 3 wars with official names. A few without them. Marcus nodded. "I served 4 years active. Still reserve now." Walter glanced toward him. "Marine, always." A faint smile appeared. Respect passed silently between them. Not because of rank, not because of age, because both understood service. Eventually, Marcus pulled into a grocery store parking lot. "Wait here." Walter looked confused. Marcus hurried inside. He had no money left, yet he knew the store manager personally. Pam had known him since childhood. When Marcus explained the situation, she listened without interruption. "You need groceries for somebody else while you cannot afford your own." Marcus nodded. Pam laughed softly. Some people never change. She handed him a shopping basket. "Get what he needs. Pay me back later." Within minutes, Marcus returned carrying bread, soup, eggs, milk, bananas, and canned vegetables. Nothing extravagant, just enough food to keep someone healthy for several days. Walter stared at the groceries resting in his lap. Then he stared at Marcus. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus pulled back onto the road. "Because somebody once helped my grandmother and me when we needed it." Walter remained silent. Marcus continued, "A stranger paid our electric bill, never told us his name, never wanted credit. I figured I would spend my life paying that kindness forward." The truck grew quiet again. This time the silence felt different, warmer, less guarded. Eventually they arrived at Walter's building. The structure looked tired. Paint peeled from the walls. Windows showed signs of age. A narrow staircase led upstairs. Marcus helped carry the groceries to the entrance. Walter stopped before opening the door. Then he reached into his jacket. Marcus expected money. Instead, Walter produced a heavy brass challenge coin. Its edges were worn smooth from years of handling. One side displayed an eagle clutching a shield. The other carried an inscription, "Brotherhood has no expiration date." Beneath those words appeared the initials WB. Walter placed the coin into Marcus's hand. "Keep it." Marcus examined the unusual emblem. "What does it mean?" Walter's expression softened. "It means good men should never stand alone." Before Marcus could ask another question, Walter disappeared inside the building. The door closed. The conversation ended. Marcus returned home carrying an empty wallet and a mysterious coin. That evening, Loretta immediately noticed the missing groceries. She listened patiently as Marcus explained everything. The old veteran, the medal, the $40, the ride, the food. When he finished, she simply shook her head. "You are exactly like your mother." Marcus expected criticism. Instead, he found affection. Loretta studied the challenge coin beneath the kitchen light. "A man who carries something like this has a story." Marcus placed the coin beside his mother's photograph before going to bed. The small brass token seemed insignificant, just another keepsake from a stranger. At least, that was what Marcus believed. 2 mornings later, he arrived at work and discovered a plain white envelope waiting near the shop entrance. No stamp, no return address, only 2 handwritten words. "The Marine." Marcus opened it. Inside rested $200 in crisp bills, along with a short note. "For the groceries and the ride. You did not have to help. That is why it mattered." WB Marcus stared at the money. $200 could solve nearly every immediate problem in his life. Rent pressure, prescription costs, truck payments, food, everything. Yet something inside him refused to keep it. That evening, he drove straight to Walter's building. He climbed the stairs, knocked on the door, and prepared to return every dollar. What Marcus did not know was that a black SUV sat parked 3 blocks away. The same SUV from the pawn shop, and inside, someone was speaking urgently into a phone. After more than a year of searching, they believed they had finally found Walter Barrett. Marcus knocked twice before the door opened. Walter Barrett stood in the doorway looking stronger than he had days earlier, though the signs of hardship remained. His face still appeared thin, his jacket still looked worn, yet there was more life in his eyes now. The groceries had helped, the rest had helped. Most importantly, someone had reminded him that he still mattered. Marcus held out the envelope. Walter immediately recognized it. "You came all the way here to return that?" Marcus nodded. "I did not help you for money." Walter studied him carefully. "Most people would have kept it." "Maybe, but I am not most people." For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Walter stepped aside. "Come in." The room looked exactly as Marcus remembered, sparse, quiet, almost empty, yet something about it felt less cold than before. Walter placed a kettle on a small, hot plate. "Coffee?" Marcus smiled. "Always." The 2 men sat across from each other with steaming mugs balanced between their hands. Conversation came easier now. They talked about military life, old memories, lessons learned, regrets. The subjects shifted naturally. For the first time since meeting Walter, Marcus felt like he was seeing the person beneath the hardship. Walter possessed a dry sense of humor. He listened more than he spoke. When he answered questions, his words carried weight. Every sentence sounded earned. Eventually, Marcus mentioned the mentorship center. His eyes brightened immediately. He pulled a legal pad from his backpack. Page after page revealed floor plans, sketches, volunteer lists, and budget ideas. Walter examined each drawing closely. His expression never changed. Yet Marcus noticed something. Walter was not looking at the plans like a casual observer. He was analyzing them. How will you handle liability? Marcus blinked. Liability? If a child gets hurt at the center, who is responsible? Marcus hesitated. I have not figured that out yet. What about operating costs during the first 3 years? Donations fluctuate. You need stability. Marcus stared. How do you know all this? Walter shrugged casually. I read a lot. Marcus laughed. That answer sounded suspicious. Walter simply sipped his coffee. The conversation continued for another hour. When Marcus finally left, he carried more than advice. He carried curiosity. The old veteran knew far more about business than he admitted. That realization lingered. Over the following weeks, their friendship deepened. Marcus visited several times each week. Sometimes he brought leftovers from Loretta, sometimes groceries, sometimes nothing at all except conversation. Walter never asked for help. Marcus never waited for him to ask. The visits became routine, a friendship built through small acts of consistency. One afternoon, Marcus noticed something unusual. A black SUV sat parked across the street from Walter's building. The engine remained running. The windows were heavily tinted. The vehicle stayed there nearly an hour. Then it left. Several days later, Marcus spotted the same SUV outside a grocery store. Again, the occupants never emerged. Again, the vehicle eventually disappeared. When Marcus casually mentioned it, Walter became noticeably quiet. His eyes drifted toward the window. The conversation changed immediately. Marcus filed that reaction away. Another piece of a puzzle he did not yet understand. Then came the challenge coin. Marcus had attached it to his keychain. One afternoon, while paying for groceries, the cashier noticed it. Her name was Denise. She pointed toward the coin. Where did you get that? A friend gave it to me. Denise looked surprised. You know what that logo is? Marcus shook his head. No idea. That is Ironclad Security Group. My cousin works private security. Everybody in that industry knows that emblem. Marcus frowned. Never heard of it. Denise laughed. Trust me, that company is huge. Marcus glanced down at the coin. The eagle and shield suddenly seemed more important than before. Still, he dismissed the thought. There was no way the struggling veteran living above a hardware store had connections to some major corporation. The idea sounded ridiculous. Life returned to normal, or at least it seemed that way, until one Tuesday evening. Marcus arrived carrying a container of stew and fresh cornbread from Loretta. The hallway felt unusually quiet. He knocked, no answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. Concern tightened inside his chest. The door was unlocked. Marcus pushed it open. His heart immediately dropped. Walter lay on the floor. His back rested against the wall. His eyes remained partially open. His breathing sounded shallow. The color had drained from his face. Marcus rushed across the room. Training took over instantly. Check responsiveness. Check airway. Check pulse. Walter was alive. Barely. Sir, stay with me. Walter's eyes slowly focused. Marine. When did you last eat? Walter said nothing. That answer told Marcus everything. Starvation, dehydration, exhaustion, a body quietly shutting down. Marcus grabbed water and carefully helped him drink. Then he reached for his phone. I am calling an ambulance. Suddenly Walter's hand gripped his wrist, weak, yet determined. No hospitals. You need help. No hospitals. The fear in Walter's eyes shocked Marcus. This was not fear of illness, not fear of death. It was fear of being found. Who is looking for you? Walter turned away. He offered no answer. Hours later, with assistance from Pastor James Wilson, Marcus managed to stabilize him. Food, water, rest, slow recovery. Eventually, Walter fell asleep. The room became quiet. Marcus remained seated nearby, watching, thinking, worry growing. If something happened again, somebody needed to be contacted. An emergency contact, a relative, a friend, anyone. Reluctantly, Marcus searched for identification. He checked the duffel bag first. Nothing useful. Then he opened the shoebox. Purple heart, silver star, Helen's photograph. Beneath them rested folded legal documents. Marcus unfolded the papers. His eyes scanned the text, then widened. He read the first page again and again. The room suddenly felt smaller because the name at the top of the document changed everything he thought he knew about Walter Barrett. Marcus sat motionless beneath the dim light bulb. The legal document remained open in his hands. Every line confirmed the same unbelievable truth. Walter Barrett was not simply a retired veteran struggling through hard times. He was the co-founder of Ironclad Security Group, one of the largest private defense and security companies in the nation. The signature pages were authentic. The names were real. The numbers attached to the company reached into hundreds of millions of dollars. Marcus slowly lowered the papers. Then he looked toward the sleeping man on the cot. Nothing about the room matched the document. Nothing about Walter's circumstances made sense. The cracked walls, the worn jacket, the empty refrigerator, the hunger, the loneliness. How could a man connected to that kind of success end up here? Marcus pulled out his phone. He searched the company name. Results appeared instantly. Government contracts, international operations, thousands of employees, national recognition, photographs filled the screen. One image immediately caught his attention. Two executives stood together at a formal ceremony. One was Raymond Connors, the other was a younger version of Walter Barrett. Healthier, stronger, confident, yet unmistakably the same man. Marcus stared at the photograph, then at Walter, then back at the photograph. Every clue suddenly connected. The challenge coin, the business knowledge, the black SUV, the questions about budgets and liability, the mysterious logo. Everything finally made sense. The next morning, Walter appeared stronger. The color had returned to his face. He sat quietly on the edge of the cot, drinking coffee. Marcus arrived carrying breakfast. Neither man spoke immediately. The silence carried unusual weight. Finally, Marcus placed the challenge coin on the table. Ironclad Security Group. Walter looked at the coin, then at Marcus. His expression revealed no surprise. "You know." Marcus nodded. "You built the company." Walter sighed softly. "Part of it." Marcus leaned forward. "Sir, that company is worth hundreds of millions. Why are you living like this?" Walter stared into his coffee. For several moments he seemed lost inside memories. Then he finally answered, "Because money could not save Helen." The words landed heavily. Marcus remained quiet. Walter continued, "When she got sick, I spent everything I personally owned. Every treatment, every specialist, every chance. Nothing worked. When she died, the life I built stopped mattering." Marcus listened carefully. "I transferred control to Ray. Then I left." "Just like that?" Walter nodded. "Just like that? You never contacted anyone?" "No." "You never checked on the company?" "No." "Why?" Walter looked away. "Because I did not want to survive her." The honesty in that answer stunned Marcus. This was not a business problem. It was grief, deep, crushing. Unresolved grief. "You almost died here." Walter's eyes met his. Maybe that was the point. Marcus felt frustration rising. Not anger, concern, respect, and disappointment. All at once. "Sir, with respect, Marines do not abandon their brothers, and Navy SEALs do not quit missions." Walter said nothing. His silence confirmed the truth. For the first time since Helen's death, someone had challenged him directly. Not as a businessman, not as a veteran, as a human being. Marcus leaned forward. "Your partner is still looking for you." Walter's jaw tightened. "Probably. Then let him find you." "No." "Yes, no." The conversation hung between them. Neither man backed down. Eventually, Walter's shoulders lowered slightly. The resistance remained, but the certainty was fading. Marcus pressed gently. You spent your life saving people. Now let somebody save you. The room grew quiet. Outside, traffic moved through the street below. Inside, years of pain collided with a simple truth. Walter could not continue living this way. Finally, almost too softly to hear, he spoke. "Okay." Marcus exhaled. That single word felt larger than any speech. It represented surrender. Not weakness, acceptance, the kind that takes tremendous courage. That afternoon, Marcus stepped outside carrying his phone. His heart pounded. The number appeared online. Ironclad Security Group headquarters. He dialed. A receptionist answered professionally. "How may I direct your call?" Marcus swallowed. "I need to speak with Raymond Connors." There was a pause. "Mr. Connors does not accept unsolicited calls. Tell him Walter Barrett is alive." Silence followed. Long silence. Then the receptionist spoke again. "Please hold." The music began. 30 seconds, 40 seconds, nearly a minute. Then another voice arrived, deep, controlled, tense. "This is Raymond Connors." Marcus explained everything. Walter's condition, the apartment, the collapse, the recovery, the location. Ray interrupted only once. "Where is he?" Marcus provided the address. "Do not let him leave." The line disconnected immediately. Marcus stared at his phone. A strange feeling settled inside him. He had just altered the course of another man's life. Maybe for better. Maybe not. There was no way to know. That evening, black vehicles appeared outside Walter's building. One sedan, another behind it. Doors opened, men stepped out. Among them stood a silver-haired executive wearing an expensive suit. The moment Marcus saw his face, he recognized him from the photographs. Raymond Connors had arrived, and judging by the emotion visible in his eyes, this reunion was about to reveal secrets neither Marcus nor Walter expected. The hallway outside Walter Barrett's apartment felt unusually quiet. Rain clouds drifted across the evening sky as black vehicles lined the curb below. Marcus stood near the doorway, watching a moment unfold that had been delayed for more than a year. Raymond Connors climbed the narrow staircase without hesitation. Expensive suits and polished shoes could not hide the exhaustion on his face. This was not the expression of a corporate executive. This was the face of a man who had spent countless nights wondering whether his closest friend was alive. The door opened. Walter looked up. For several seconds, neither man moved. No dramatic speeches, no emotional reunion, just silence. Heavy, powerful, honest silence. Ray studied Walter's thin frame, the hollow cheeks, the worn clothes, the evidence of months spent disappearing from the world. His jaw tightened. "You stubborn fool." Walter managed a faint smile. "I know." Ray stepped closer. 18 months, Walter. 18 months. I hired investigators, former operators, security teams. Everyone said the same thing. If a Navy SEAL does not want to be found, he will not be found. Walter lowered his eyes. "I was not ready." "Ready for what?" Ray's voice cracked unexpectedly. "Ready to tell somebody your wife died? Ready to admit you were hurting? Ready to ask for help?" The room became still. Walter looked away. For the first time since Marcus met him, the former warrior seemed vulnerable. Not weak, human. Ray pulled a chair beside the cot. "You could have called me." Walter swallowed hard. "I did not know what to say." "Then say that. Say you were broken. Say you were angry. Say you were lost. Just do not disappear." Neither man spoke after that. Words were no longer necessary. Years of friendship filled the silence between them. Medical personnel quietly entered the room. They examined Walter carefully. Blood pressure, hydration, nutrition, general health. Ray had brought professionals. Not because Walter asked, because somebody finally cared enough to ignore his objections. Throughout everything, Marcus remained near the doorway. He felt like an outsider witnessing something deeply personal. Walter was safe now. That was enough. He reached for his jacket. "Where are you going?" Ray's voice stopped him. Marcus paused. "I figured this was family business." Ray walked toward him. "It is, which means you should stay." Marcus looked confused. Ray extended his hand. "You are Marcus Griffin, the Marine." "Yes, sir. Thank you." The sincerity behind those words caught Marcus off guard. Ray continued, "Walter told me everything. The pawn shop, the groceries, the rides, the visits, the fact that you refused money." Marcus shrugged awkwardly. "Anybody would have done it." Walter laughed from across the room. "No, most people would not." Ray nodded. "He is right." Then Ray asked a surprising question. "Tell me about the mentorship center." Marcus blinked. "The what?" "The community center, the legal pad, the plans, the dream." Marcus glanced toward Walter. The old veteran remained expressionless. Apparently he had shared more information than Marcus realized. Ray listened carefully as Marcus described the project: the tutoring rooms, the gym, the computer lab, the kitchen, the volunteers, the neighborhood children. Everything. When Marcus finished, Ray remained thoughtful. Then he asked questions. Detailed questions, practical questions, operational questions. Marcus answered as best he could. Eventually Ray smiled. "You know what impresses me?" Marcus shook his head. "You built a complete vision with almost no resources. Most people wait until conditions become perfect. You started anyway." Marcus laughed softly. "The conditions never become perfect." "Exactly." Ray glanced toward Walter. "That sounds familiar." For the first time all evening, Walter smiled openly. A small smile, but genuine. Then Ray turned serious. "Walter founded a division inside Ironclad years ago. Community outreach, veteran support, youth development. It was his favorite project." Marcus listened carefully. "After the company expanded, defense contracts consumed most of our attention. That division survived, but it lost direction." Ray folded his hands. "We need somebody to rebuild it." Marcus frowned. "Why are you telling me this? Because Walter believes you can do it." Marcus immediately shook his head. "I repair vehicles for a living. You build people." Ray's response came instantly. "There is a difference." Marcus opened his mouth, then stopped. The room grew quiet again. Ray reached into his briefcase. Several folders appeared. Documents, budgets, plans, numbers. He placed them on the table. What followed left Marcus speechless. Ironclad wanted to fund the entire mentorship center: building acquisition, renovations, staff salaries, equipment, operational support, scholarship programs, everything. Marcus stared at the paperwork. His pulse quickened. His dream sat inches away. No longer a sketch, no longer an idea. A possibility. A real possibility. Then Ray revealed one final detail. The project would carry a special name, a scholarship honoring Helen Barrett. Walter lowered his head. Emotion crossed his face. For months he had been running from loss. Now that loss was about to create hope for thousands of young people. Marcus struggled to process everything. The room seemed unreal. Days earlier, he had possessed $38. Now he was being offered the opportunity to transform an entire community. He looked toward Walter. The old veteran met his gaze. "You earned this, Marine, every bit of it." Marcus felt emotion rise inside his chest. Not because of money, not because of opportunity, because he suddenly understood something profound. The $40 at the pawn shop had never been a sacrifice. It had been the first step in a mission much larger than himself. And outside the window, cameras from local news stations were beginning to arrive, because word had already started spreading. A missing billionaire, a struggling Marine, a friendship nobody expected, and a story the entire country was about to discover. News spread faster than anyone expected. What began as a quiet reunion inside a rented room above a hardware store quickly became a story people could not stop talking about. Reporters started calling Ironclad Security Group. Local journalists gathered outside Walter Barrett's building. Social media exploded with speculation. Everyone wanted answers. Where had Walter been? Why had he vanished? And who was the young Marine who had found him? Marcus Griffin wanted no part of the attention. The morning after Raymond Connors arrived, Marcus reported to Patterson Auto Body exactly as he always did. The same cracked parking lot greeted him. The same smell of oil and paint filled the air. The same gospel station played through the shop speakers. For Marcus, life still felt ordinary, at least until a black luxury sedan pulled into the lot. Every mechanic stopped working. Every customer looked outside. Tommy nearly dropped a wrench. Marcus watched as Ray Connors stepped out of the vehicle. The billionaire executive walked directly toward him. "You busy?" Marcus looked around the garage. "Very." Ray smiled. "Good. I like people who work." Within minutes, they sat inside the small office overlooking the repair bays. Ray placed a folder on the desk. Marcus immediately recognized it. "The Mentorship Center proposal. I thought we already discussed this." "We did. Then why are you here?" "Because I need your answer." Marcus leaned back. The truth was simple. He had barely slept. The offer felt overwhelming. For years, he had dreamed about helping young people avoid the mistakes and hardships he witnessed growing up. Now that dream stood directly in front of him. Real, possible, achievable. Yet fear remained. "What if I fail?" Ray laughed softly. "Then you learn. What if I am not qualified?" "You care. That qualifies you more than most people." Marcus looked down at his hands. Oil stains still marked his fingers. The hands of a mechanic, not an executive, not a director, not a community leader. Ray seemed to read his thoughts. "Walter spent months talking about you." Marcus frowned. "Months? Every visit, every meal, every conversation. You reminded him that service still mattered, that purpose still existed." Ray leaned forward. "You saved more than his life. You gave him a reason to keep living." Those words struck harder than Marcus expected. For a moment, he could not respond. Eventually, he nodded. "I will do it." Ray extended his hand immediately. "Then let us get to work." Everything moved quickly after that. Buildings were evaluated. Architects reviewed Marcus's original sketches. Community leaders offered support. Pastor James Wilson became one of the project's strongest advocates. Loretta Griffin cried openly when she learned the news. Not tears of sadness, tears of relief. For years, she had watched her grandson carry impossible responsibilities. Now she finally saw something good returning to him. Meanwhile, Walter's recovery continued. His strength gradually returned. Better meals helped. Medical care helped. Regular companionship helped even more. For the first time since Helen's death, he began speaking about the future. One afternoon, Marcus found him sitting near a window overlooking the street. Coffee rested beside him. A notebook lay open across his lap. "Planning something?" Walter smiled. "Always." Marcus sat nearby. "What kind of plans?" "The dangerous kind." Marcus laughed. "Should I be worried?" "Probably." Walter slid the notebook across the table. Inside were pages filled with ideas, programs, leadership workshops, scholarships, veteran mentorship initiatives, community partnerships. Marcus stared. "You have been busy. I had a lot of time to think while hiding from the world." That answer carried unexpected honesty. Neither man ignored it. Walter continued, "I wasted enough time. I do not intend to waste more." The weeks passed. Momentum grew. Construction crews transformed an abandoned warehouse into something remarkable. Broken windows disappeared. Fresh paint covered neglected walls. Classrooms emerged. Computer labs took shape. A gymnasium appeared. Everything Marcus once sketched inside his truck slowly became reality. Then, one afternoon, another surprise arrived. A national television network requested an interview. Marcus immediately declined. Ray expected that response. Walter laughed when he heard about it. "You realize normal people would enjoy this attention." Marcus shook his head. "I am not normal." Fair point. Still, the story continued spreading. Veterans connected with it. Families connected with it. People across the country saw something rare. A story driven by kindness instead of conflict. Donations began arriving. Letters filled mailboxes. Messages poured into ironclad headquarters. Many came from people facing their own struggles. Some thanked Marcus. Others thanked Walter. A few simply shared their own stories of grief, hope, and second chances. One evening, Walter sat reading several of those letters. His eyes paused on a particular message. A widow from Ohio described losing her husband and withdrawing from the world. She ended the note with a simple sentence. "Because of your story, I called my daughter today." Walter stared at those words for a long time, long after everyone else left, long after the office lights dimmed. Finally, he folded the letter carefully. His eyes filled with emotion. because for the first time he realized something important. The pain he spent 18 months running from was helping other people heal, and that realization changed him forever. Yet neither Marcus nor Walter knew the biggest challenge still awaited them. Because just as construction on the mentorship center neared completion, an unexpected visitor arrived at Ironclad headquarters carrying information about Helen Barrett. Information Walter had never heard before. Information capable of reopening old wounds and changing everything once again. The final construction crews had barely finished their work when an unexpected visitor arrived at Ironclad headquarters. The woman appeared ordinary at first glance, mid-60s, professional, calm. Yet the moment Walter Barrett saw her waiting in the conference room, his expression changed. He recognized her immediately. Dr. Elaine Mercer, one of Helen's oncologists, the last doctor involved in her treatment. Walter had not seen her since the final weeks of his wife's life. For a moment, old memories rushed back. Hospital hallways, quiet conversations, difficult decisions, the sound of machines, the helplessness. Every painful detail returned. Walter almost turned around, almost walked away. But Marcus stood beside him, and for once he stayed. Dr. Mercer greeted him warmly. "Walter, it has been a long time." Walter nodded. "Too long." The doctor sat carefully. "There is something I have wanted to tell you for years." The room immediately became quiet. Ray Connors remained seated nearby. Marcus stood against the wall. Nobody interrupted. Dr. Mercer opened a folder. Inside were documents Walter had never seen. Helen requested they remain private. Walter frowned. "Private from me?" The doctor nodded. She insisted. Walter's heart sank. Helen rarely kept secrets, especially from him. "What is this?" Dr. Mercer slid a handwritten letter across the table. Walter recognized the handwriting instantly. "Helen." His hands trembled. For several seconds he simply stared, unable to move, unable to breathe. Then he opened the letter. The room disappeared around him. Only Helen's words remained. "My love, if you are reading this, then I am already gone. I know you. I know you will try to carry everything alone. I know you will blame yourself. I know you will spend years searching for answers that do not exist. Please do not. Nothing about my illness was your fault. You gave me every possible chance, every possible day, every possible memory. You loved me completely. That was enough." Walter stopped reading. His vision blurred. Tears filled his eyes. The room remained silent. He continued, "If I know you at all, you are already planning to disappear. Do not. The world still needs you. Ray still needs you. Your employees still need you. And somewhere there are people whose lives will change because of choices you have not made yet. Promise me you will stay. Promise me you will keep serving. Promise me you will keep living." Walter lowered the letter. The tears finally came. Not quietly, not briefly. Years of grief collapsed at once. 18 months of isolation, 18 months of guilt, 18 months of running, all of it broke apart. Ray looked away respectfully. Marcus remained still. Neither man tried to stop him. Some pain must be released before healing can begin. When Walter finally regained composure, Dr. Mercer spoke softly. "There is more." She opened another folder. "Helen established a private trust before her death." Walter blinked. "A trust?" The doctor nodded. "She used her personal assets. Not yours, not Ironclad's. Her own. The trust remained inactive until specific conditions were met." "What conditions?" "You had to return. You had to reconnect with your life. You had to stop hiding." Walter sat speechless. For the first time in many months, a genuine smile touched Ray's face. "That sounds exactly like Helen." The doctor smiled. "It does. She wanted the funds used for one purpose: youth mentorship, education, community development." Walter looked toward Marcus, then toward the mentorship center plans displayed across the conference table. Emotion filled his eyes again. Helen had somehow anticipated everything, even before her death. The trust contained several $1 million, enough to expand programs nationwide, enough to create opportunities for thousands of young people, enough to continue her legacy for generations. Marcus struggled to believe what he was hearing. Months earlier, he worried about groceries. Now entire communities stood to benefit because one woman believed in service. The meeting lasted hours. Plans evolved, new initiatives formed. Additional scholarship programs emerged. By sunset, the future looked larger than anyone imagined. Yet the most important moment happened after everyone else left. Walter remained alone inside the conference room. Helen's letter rested in his hands. Marcus quietly approached. "You okay?" Walter stared through the window. The city lights shimmered below. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he smiled, for the first time since she died. "I think I am." Marcus nodded. Neither man needed additional words, because healing had finally begun. But outside the building, another surprise was already waiting. A national news crew had arrived, and by morning, the story of Marcus Griffin, Walter Barrett, and Helen's final gift would be broadcast across the entire country. The story reached the entire country faster than anyone expected. By sunrise, national news networks carried headlines about an aging Navy SEAL, a struggling Marine reservist, and a simple act of kindness that transformed countless lives. Television anchors discussed the Mentorship Center. Online articles highlighted Helen Barrett's final gift. Veterans organizations shared the story across social media. Millions of people watched. Millions more listened. Marcus Griffin hated every minute of the attention. He preferred workshops over interviews, mentoring over microphones, action over recognition. Yet he understood something important. The story no longer belonged to him. It belonged to everyone inspired by it. The grand opening of the Griffin Community Mentorship Center arrived on a bright Saturday morning. Sunshine washed across Norfolk. Families filled the sidewalks. Children crowded near the entrance. Volunteers moved between tables, carrying supplies and refreshments. A year earlier, the building had been abandoned. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, neglected and forgotten. Now it stood transformed. Fresh paint gleamed beneath the sunlight. New signs welcomed visitors. Classrooms waited for students. Computers lined modern learning spaces. The gym echoed with excitement. The kitchen smelled of fresh food. Everything Marcus once imagined inside his legal pad now existed in reality. Loretta Griffin stood near the front entrance. Tears filled her eyes. She watched children rushing through doors that once opened only into darkness. Pastor James Wilson stood beside her. His smile seemed as large as the building itself. "I told you God was working." Loretta laughed softly. "You tell everybody that, because it keeps being true." The ceremony began shortly afterward. Community leaders spoke. Teachers spoke. Veterans spoke. Then Marcus approached the podium. The crowd immediately quieted. He hated public speaking. Everyone knew it. His discomfort somehow made him more relatable. Marcus looked across the audience. Children, parents, neighbors, volunteers, friends, people who believed in possibilities. He cleared his throat. "This building is not mine." The audience listened closely. "It belongs to every young person who walks through these doors and realizes they matter. It belongs to every family searching for hope. It belongs to every mentor willing to serve." Marcus paused. "A few months ago, I thought my biggest problem was $38. Laughter rippled through the crowd. He smiled. "Turns out the biggest opportunities sometimes arrive disguised as problems." The audience applauded. Short, simple, honest, exactly like Marcus. When the ribbon finally fell, cheers echoed across the neighborhood. Children rushed inside. Parents followed. Volunteers immediately began giving tours. The dream had become real. Yet the impact extended far beyond one building. The Helen Barrett Memorial Scholarship launched its first selection cycle. Students from underserved communities applied. Future nurses, teachers, emergency responders, military recruits, social workers. The opportunities continued expanding. Walter became one of the center's most dedicated volunteers. Twice each week, he taught leadership classes for teenagers. The students called him Chief. He pretended to dislike the nickname. Nobody believed him. One teenager in particular captured his attention, 17-year-old Devon Brooks. Bright, angry, frustrated, drifting toward trouble. Walter recognized the signs immediately. The two clashed often during the first few weeks. Devon challenged every lesson, questioned every rule, rejected every piece of advice. Most mentors would have given up. Walter refused. One afternoon, after another heated discussion, Walter stopped him near the exit. "You remind me of somebody." Devon rolled his eyes. "Who?" "Me." The teenager froze. For the first time, he listened. Their relationship changed after that conversation, gradually, steadily. Weeks later, Devon earned the highest grades of his academic career. Months later, he joined the center's leadership program. His transformation became one of many success stories emerging from the community. Meanwhile, donations poured into the scholarship fund. Veterans across the country contributed. Small business owners contributed. Teachers contributed. Single parents contributed. The movement continued growing. One evening, Marcus reviewed new applications inside his office. Walter entered carrying coffee. "You look tired." "Good tired. That is the best kind." Walter placed the cup on the desk. For a moment, both men watched students playing basketball through the gymnasium window. The sounds of laughter filled the building, something neither man overlooked. Months earlier, Walter wanted to disappear. Months earlier, Marcus worried about paying utility bills. Now both stood inside a place changing lives every day. Walter smiled quietly. "Helen would love this." Marcus nodded. "She already does." The old veteran looked away. Emotion touched his eyes. Not sadness, gratitude, peace. The kind he thought he would never find again. Yet another surprise waited just around the corner. Because later that evening, a courier arrived carrying a small package addressed specifically to Marcus Griffin. There was no return address. Only a handwritten note attached to the outside. When Marcus opened the box, what he found inside left him completely speechless. Marcus carried the package into his office and closed the door behind him. Evening sunlight stretched across the floor. The center had finally grown quiet. Students had gone home. Volunteers were finishing their last tasks. Only distant laughter echoed through the hallways. He placed the box on his desk and carefully opened it. Inside rested a handcrafted mahogany display case. Rich wood, velvet lining, polished glass. Marcus immediately recognized what sat beneath the glass. Walter Barrett's Purple Heart, the same medal from the pawn shop, the same medal he refused to let Walter sell. For several seconds he simply stared. A folded note rested beside it. Marcus unfolded the paper. The handwriting was familiar. "Marine, I finally got the medal back. Some things are not meant to be sold. They are meant to be passed forward. This belongs to you now. Not because you fought in my battles, because you fought for a stranger when nobody was watching. That kind of courage deserves recognition too. Brotherhood has no expiration date." "Walter." Marcus lowered the note. Emotion filled the room. Not because of the medal itself, because of everything it represented. The pawn shop, the rain, the $40, the friendship, the second chances, the lives changed along the way. He carefully carried the display case home that evening. Loretta waited at the kitchen table. The smell of fresh cobbler filled the apartment. She immediately noticed his expression. "What happened?" Marcus placed the display case before her. Loretta read the note silently, then smiled. "Your mother would be proud." Marcus looked toward the shelf near the living room window. His mother's photograph remained there. Beside it rested the folded American flag. Next to that sat Walter's challenge coin. Now the Purple Heart joined them. 4 objects, 4 stories, 1 life. Marcus stood quietly for several moments. The shelf no longer represented loss. It represented purpose. Across town, Walter Barrett sat near the window of his apartment. Rain had returned to Norfolk. Soft drops tapped against the glass. A warm cup of coffee rested in his hands. The city lights shimmered beyond the storm. For months he had watched rain through loneliness, through grief, through isolation. Tonight felt different. His phone rang. "Ray Connors." Walter answered. "How is the old warrior doing?" Walter smiled. "Still breathing." "Good. We have expansion proposals from 6 states." Walter laughed. "Only 6?" Ray laughed too. "There he is." The conversation continued for nearly an hour. Future plans, scholarships, mentorship programs, community partnerships, work that mattered, work Helen would have loved. When the call ended, Walter remained by the window. The rain continued falling. For the first time in nearly 2 years, he felt something stronger than grief. Hope. Months passed. The center expanded, scholarships multiplied, volunteer networks grew, students succeeded, families found support, lives changed. Devon Brooks earned acceptance into college. Kesha completed nursing school. Dozens of young people discovered opportunities they never imagined possible. Each success created another. Each act of kindness inspired another. The ripple effect never stopped. One afternoon, a reporter asked Marcus what lesson people should take from everything that happened. He thought carefully before answering. Then he smiled. People think big changes start with big moments. Most of the time, they start with small choices. A conversation, a ride, a meal, a little kindness. You never know which one changes a life. The interview spread nationwide. Millions watched. Millions shared it. But Marcus never focused on the attention. His focus remained the same place it had always been. The next student, the next family, the next opportunity to help. Years later, visitors entering the Griffin Community Mentorship Center often stopped near a display case in the lobby. Inside rested a purple heart. Beside it sat a brass challenge coin. A small plaque told the story. Not of wealth, not of fame, not of success. It told the story of compassion. A struggling Marine, a grieving Navy SEAL. A simple decision made inside a pawn shop during a rainstorm. Children read the plaque, parents read the plaque, veterans read the plaque, and everyone left with the same reminder. Kindness is never wasted. You may never see where it leads, but it always travels farther than you think. Somewhere beyond the walls of that center, lives continued changing because one young man refused to look away from someone else's struggle. And somewhere beyond the rain, Helen Barrett's wish continued coming true. Walter stayed, Marcus served, hope multiplied. And the story never truly ended. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, your viewing location, and share this video.